Let's now bring in Amos Hochstein, former senior advisor to President Biden and managing partner of TWG Global. Amos, thank you so much for joining. Did I get that last name right?
No.
You're doing. See how they tricked me on this? Hochstein. There we go. Hochstein. I got the first one correct. Okay, correct. So you have done this before, right? The kind of thinking through, okay, what could happen next? I want to play something from Ayman's interview, exclusive interview with the Iranian foreign minister about the Strait of Hormuz. This is element 3.
Will the Straits of Hormuz remain closed so long as this war continues?
Well, as a matter of fact, the Strait of Hormuz is open. It is only closed to the tankers and ships belong to our enemies, to those who are attacking us and their allies. Others are free to pass. Of course, many of them prefer not because of their security concerns. This has nothing to do with us.
The strait is open, but we might, shoot at you if you're the United States or Israel trying to come through. You have looked through these kinds of things before with the previous administration. How bad do you think this can get?
So first, we are already in the worst energy crisis the world has ever seen.
Yeah.
Even worse than the 1970s when there was a total embargo, or the 1980s when we had what was called the tanker wars and U.S. Navy escorted ships. This is worse for a few reasons. One, the scale is so much bigger now. People talk about oil, but it's not just oil. We have oil, 20% of the world's LNG, the liquefied natural gas. But then they also make a lot of products in that region, right? So LPG, which is for lower income people, use that for cooking oil. Diesel, jet fuel, fertilizer. This is a really bad time for fertilizer because we're about to go into planting season across the United States and the costs are going up. So all of those things. Now, it takes hours to shut something down. It takes a lot longer to restart it up. So it's not like the war ends and you flip a switch and everything goes through. So we're all ready. The contingency plans are, you have to think about these things in advance before the risk of closing happens. And then you got to plan out. You got to talk to the energy companies. You got to talk to the regional players. You got to talk to the global scene. I don't believe that happened before the war. And I think now what you're seeing is this lurching from one issue to the other. Right? On the first day was, we're going to escort them. Well, maybe that won't work. So we're going to do an insurance scheme. But everybody says, well, that's crazy. That's not going to work. So then we go into, well, we'll try to find other alternatives. We'll invite people to come in. Or the SPR release, when you do that, the market says to itself, all right, there's really no solution because every day I hear a different one. Clearly there isn't one. And you're seeing this massive price increase.
Yeah. Well, Amos, I want to stay on this point because you dealt with this issue, a sort of a parallel issue, when you were in charge of all of the energy security with regards to Ukraine and Russia. Can you keep walking us through a little bit about how this process works, how you dealt with it in Ukraine, and if this is something that should have happened prior to Trump's decision to go to war with Iran? And who is in your job now in the Trump administration? And I guess, does that even matter, right? Even if the process is working as it should with a principal like Trump, it doesn't matter.
So look, before the war, before Russia invaded Ukraine, we were concerned that they may, right? Remember, we shared intelligence we declassified intelligence, shared it to get the world to understand this may happen. And we had the Emir of Qatar. We talked to every supplier around the world. And we started thinking about, all right, let's, in advance, get supplies to Europe. So before the invasion ever happened, we were surging supplies to Europe, knowing that one of the things that the Russians may do is cut off the pipelines, cut off supplies. So we got their storage to be as full as possible so that we can go through a period of time of stress. We did the same thing with other energy products. We even had a list of which industries we would shut down first or slow their access to energy. Beer, ice cream, crypto, etc.
Not the beer and ice cream.
That was the UK's reaction, was not the beer. It was like, we'll do everything else.
Driving them the little joy.
No, in Europe, right? Shutting this down in Europe. So you have to look at it in advance because that's when you have the most ability to make a change, to make a difference. Here, we could have done things in advance, pre-position ships, making sure we have more loads that are reached so the world would not have this shock, and actually Iran would have less ability to have an influence and pressure. Because we didn't do that, we're now playing catch up of trying to figure out how do you do this. And look, January.
Sorry, keep going. No, keep going. Sorry.
In January, when we started talking about maybe going to war, that's the metric, right? Not 2 weeks before the war, because the world started thinking about war in January. During those protests, help is on the way. The price of oil was 60 here in the United States. It's today 100.
Yeah. Is there a person at the NSC right now that's you?
I don't believe so.
Is there an NSC?
Yeah, I was about to say competence. Everything you're just talking about speaks to a level of competence that just doesn't seem to be there right now. I am fixated on this notion that the president says we're going to have naval escorts of ships and then calling on other nations to be a part of it. And I think Eugene talked about it in the intro, but I want to put this up. This is element 2. South Korea says it will coordinate with the U.S. Britain says it is, quote, intensively looking at how to help secure the strait. Japanese leader expected to discuss sending warships with Trump. When I see these headlines, I don't think that they are doing this in support of the U.S. mission. To me, it screams of them doing this in defense of their own interests, their own assets. Am I thinking about this the right way? Because there is a difference.
100%. They are, look, some of these countries that you just mentioned are actually going into crisis, economic crisis. South Korea depends on gas for most of its industry and its economy. That's how they've built their economy. They're one of the biggest buyers, but they buy a lot of it from Qatar, and that's at zero now. That LNG is at zero. So, or Japan buys a lot, India, the UK, Europe, depending on jet fuel and so on. Now, they were all ridiculed in the past by the United States on their fake militaries. They don't have real assets, and now we need them. So I think they are defending their own interests, because at the end of the day, whether they like the decision to go to war or not, whether they like President Trump or not, they do want to get the products because they don't want to suffer the consequences, right? If you're India especially. So some of them are looking, I think they will. The problem with the escorts, it's not that we don't have naval assets, but if we send American Navy ships, destroyers and so on together with these tankers, the Iranians will just attack our ships. And so we're now saying, well, maybe they won't attack Japanese ships. Maybe they won't attack British ships, right? So we'll have them there as the cover. That's part of the problem in this, that the escorts, when they talked about it, in the 1980s it worked. Well, in the 1980s, it was an Iran-Iraq war, not Iran-U.S. war. So they didn't attack our ships. They tried to pinpoint to attack the actual tankers. Here, it will put our men and women at great risk if we suddenly do it. Also, they've already attacked some tankers, right? I know that Secretary Hegseth says, don't worry about it. There's nothing to worry about. You can go. But if you're a ship owner, do you send your team to go through something if they can get attacked? I don't think so.
Just to underscore your point, 90% of the crude oil that flows through the straits goes to Asia, usually. Amos Hochstein, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate it.